Man, America is rotten to the core. I have been insecure about the fact that I am an American for quite some time, and so I have given ample praise to the nation for the good aspects of it. The fact that individual states have the autonomy to enact laws that I agree with, the fact that there's the beautiful nature and mountain ranges and interesting weather in the colder parts of the country, because I have a huge preference for the cold. But for all of the things that I'm able to praise about my own nation, and for the positive influences aspects of its culture have had on me, it doesn't take all of that doesn't take away from the fact that I view America as rotten to the core. Because in the wake of the new world nations being formed, the nations in Latin America, Canada, the US, they were founded on the principles of liberalism, which include good things like freedom of expression, protections against unlawful searches and seizures. These are things that Americans are dedicated to that are good. But there are also drawbacks to the principles that this nation and others were founded on. That being the insistent obsession with private property, which has now manifested into a popular monoculture, which is totally dominated by the pursuit of wealth. In America, when you work a job, it's all about getting that raise, getting to that higher position in the company, not because you genuinely care about your work and because you believe that work will contribute to your community in a meaningful way, but because getting that raise and being in that position will give you more money to then buy more stuff. It's consumerism. It's capitalism in its hyper state. And I disagree with this. I especially disagree with how this mindset, as it pertains to popular culture, which also ends up affecting the way that all of us think, I especially have a problem with how that makes us treat one another. There was an article recently penned in the New York Times by, I believe it was David Brooks, that posited this notion that America has become a profoundly mean country. Why are we so mean to one another? Where's the respect? And I was reading that article and I just had to ask myself, maybe it's because we live in a nation where we are taught to prioritize the accumulation of wealth more than the welfare of our other fellow citizenry, of our other citizens. And yes, states do have their own cultures and their own unique cuisines, and the people from other countries who critique America are often unaware of this fact because they associate America with the massive corporations that have now expanded all over the earth. They associate America with the most toxic aspects of its culture, such as corporatism and the pursuit of wealth, of selfishness over others. These things are huge problems, sure, but the good things end up getting lost in the face of all of that so obviously bad stuff. And I think my insecurity as someone who's come from this country ultimately came from the fact that I would see people making all of these general statements about my nation and grouping all Americans together in a negative fashion, which of course made me feel bad because you shouldn't group everyone together in a negative fashion. Everyone is a person. That made me feel so insecure that I would end up playing major defense for the US by pointing to all of these positive things. And it's like, yeah, those positive things exist and they're great and all. Portland, Oregon's public transit, with the tram system, with the bus system, with the massive bike lanes, these things are all great. But the reason that they're great is because they mirror certain European cities that literally do those things better. And so when a European says, oh, the US is so bad because the infrastructure is car dependent, I'm like, yeah, I'm with you there. And the culture that produced that car dependent infrastructure, that's toxic as well. But hey, there are these little examples that are better. The thing is, though, those examples that I've given aren't just watered down versions of better European cities. They also still have aspects, remnants of the broader monoculture of the United States, which is that you have to hustle, you have to work hard to get that raise, to accumulate more wealth, to buy more stuff. And I do not think you can be concerned with the welfare of other citizens when your life revolves around getting more and more wealth. You'll come to believe that those people who are in dire straits simply made some bad choices, simply deserve what they get because they should have taken responsibility for what's going on with them. When in reality, it's more complicated. Sure, there were probably instances where they could take more responsibility, but they need guidance in learning how to do that. They need assistance when it comes to the things that were not in their control, such as a lack of education, such as a lack of job opportunities that accommodate them for whatever they may be going through, a lack of substance treatment, and so on. The amount of animus that people have towards people who are going through hard times is not something that you see in these other places where the culture is more defined by cultivating harmony. I don't think the United States is a cohesive and harmonious country. I think it's precisely the opposite, because when you have a culture, economy, and society dominated by the accumulation of capital, you will not have a cohesive and harmonious population. You will have a cutthroat and competitive population who ends up, as a result of all of that, selfish. So we have to see each individual state as like the legs of a spider. A spider has many legs that extend outward, and it's all part of the same broader thing, which is the spider itself. And the head of the spider is the country that is the United States. But it's a venomous spider, and its venom has poisoned the nations that are surrounding it. Mexico, Canada, these nations are more harmonious in certain respects, but they are nonetheless influenced by this venomous spider that surrounds them, that borders them, and that venom has even seeped into other cultures and countries that are further away. That is why, all of the reasons I've listed out here, that is why I believe that the United States is rotten to the core, because the ideology that makes up this nation, the ideological makeup of this nation, is toxic, which has a toxic impact on the population. It has a toxic impact on government policy and ultimately on the world, because these policies that are enacted in this country are going to also affect the world. The culture that comes from this country is going to affect the world. And that needs to change. I don't know how it will change. I don't think it will ever change, to be quite honest with you. But for people like me who have a belief in being kind to other people, in leaving other people alone, not constantly trying to sell them something, not constantly trying to sell oneself, but instead believe that their role is not as an individual that is separate from everyone else, but their role as a person is an individual within a collective, and that collective matters because a rising tide ultimately lifts all boats. The people with the mindset like that I'm describing, like myself, honestly, we should just go somewhere else. It's not going to be one of the neighboring countries on this continent or the continent to the south, but it's got to be somewhere. Like, I don't think we fit in this country. I don't think I fit in this country. And this was a conclusion that I came to when I was 7 years old, reading through the encyclopedias my mom had and hearing stories about the impacts that the Puritans had on this nation, seeing the actual effects of the Constitution and the laws that were passed thereafter on the nation, seeing all of this put together, the inhumane way that we treat the homeless, the sick, and so on, seeing all of this put together left me with a great feeling of alienation, even at that young, ripe age. And I still feel that alienation today. That's part of why it's such a big motivator for me to advance my education and get qualifications to be able to actually work and live in another country. After having lived for months in nations in Europe, I realized, yes, I will be treated differently simply due to the nation that I come from, but I am treated differently because of the nation I come from, because that nation has negatively affected all of the nations around it, because it's done so many obnoxious things around the world. I should not take that personally. I should instead work to adapt to the local customs and culture, which are already more amendable to me because those customs make more sense to me. The food that Europeans eat makes more sense to me. The way that they treat one another makes more sense to me. The way that you're supposed to dress in public makes more sense to me, because you have to consider other people's feelings, for God's sake. But in the United States, it seems as though so many people, once again, due to this hegemonic monoculture of selfishness, do not consider the feelings of other people. And that's because the US is rotten to the core.